that those residents that were COVID positive who needed additional care would be in a much better position to receive that care at the field hospital.
A closer look at Windsor's field hospital. 14 of the 58 COVID-19 deaths in Windsor, Essex happened here. The hospital says many of those patients did not want resuscitation. The country lost nearly 2 million jobs last month, a record high. The highest jobless rate in Canada is here in Windsor for the 4th month straight. I'm Chris Ensing. Thanks for joining us. We start tonight with the latest on COVID-19 for Windsor, Essex. Today we have 685 confirmed cases. That's up 11 cases since yesterday and includes 11 outbreaks at long-term care and retirement homes. We've learned today that another person has died because of COVID-19 in our area, a woman in her hundreds. Now, this brings the total number of deaths to 58. There were more resolved cases announced today. We're up to 252. That's 23 more than yesterday, and still a significant amount of pending tests that are outstanding, 1,420 of them. We turn now to Windsor's field hospital. 14 of the 58 people who have died of COVID-19 spent their final moments at the Sportsplex at St. Clair College. Each person was transferred from Heron Terrace, a long-term care facility in Windsor. Reporter Jacob Barker has been looking more closely at that number today. Jacob, what can you tell us about the situation there?
Well, Chris, we've learned from the hospital that all but 3 of the patients who died did not wish to have any sort of aggressive measures of resuscitation if they deteriorated. They also made advanced wishes not to be put on a ventilator. And we do know that when the field hospital opened, officials said they didn't have ventilators there. It started out as a place to take overflow from Windsor Regional Hospital in preparation of a surge. That never came. It was pivoted to offer help to facilities that were being hardest hit. That was long-term care and retirement homes. Today, the health unit said that moving residents from long-term care to the field hospital did save lives by preventing the spread of COVID-19 at the homes.
If there is any inability to separate the cases from non-cases, the likelihood of transmission is high. So that's the initial reason for separating these individuals one from another. And that's the goal in managing any of these outbreaks.
Now, Jacob, what did Heron Terrace have to say about this today?
Yeah, well, the loss of 14 residents has been devastating to the long-term care home. Staff are grateful to the field hospital facility and say it's been an invaluable resource. Adding 38 of its residents are still in care there. When the virus hit there in early April, they found themselves in crisis mode, eventually turning to the field hospital for help. Heron Terrace says it's resident themselves or their families who decide whether or not to be moved to the field hospital.
We were desperate, to be quite frank. So when the opportunity came to utilize the field hospital, we saw 2 positives. One is that it would create some relief at the home for staffing so that we would be better able to care for the residents that remained with the staff that we had, and that we knew that those residents that were COVID positive who needed additional care would be in a much better position to receive that care at the field hospital.
So as for what comes next, once the outbreak is considered over at the Windsor Long-Term Care Home and once patients at the field hospital have been cleared by the hospital, that's when those recovering patients will be able to return home to Heron Terrace. Chris?
That's the CBC's Jacob Barker tonight, live in studio. The lives lost to COVID-19, their lives remembered. Mothers, fathers, grandparents. We know this is difficult, but if you'd like to share your story about a loved one you lost to COVID-19, we'd like to help you honor their memory. You can always reach us at windsor@cbc.ca. In other news, there's no justice for one woman in Essex County. Her husband died in a motorcycle crash, and an OPP officer has been punished for lengthy delays in that investigation. That ultimately led to the case getting dropped, which means no prosecution for the at-fault driver. The CBC's Jason Vio joins us live with more. Jason, take us back to this incident. What exactly happened?
Well, it all happened just behind me here, Chris, in Kingsville. It's kind of a slanted intersection where this crash happened. It's County Road 27 and North Talbot Road. One of the vehicles, ran a stop sign here and hit the motorcycle. And on that motorcycle, there was a husband and wife. The man died shortly after. The woman survived, his wife, but she sustained serious injuries and eventually had part of her leg amputated. Now, take a look at this timeline. This will take you through. On April 9th, 2017, a crash occurs involving a husband and wife on a motorcycle. April 21st, the husband dies of his injuries. August 17th, the investigating officer tells the victim, the surviving wife, the at-fault driver would be charged with careless driving. That's the driver of the other vehicle. September 2017, the officer decides there is reasonable grounds to lay a criminal charge of dangerous driving, but the charge isn't laid at the time. February 4th of 2018, a charge is laid against the at-fault driver. March 22nd of 2018, that's the first scheduled court appearance, which never happened because the officer didn't submit a court brief. June 21st of 2018, the deputy crown attorney calls the delays inexplicable. July 5th of 2018, the deputy crown attorney tells the officer there's no longer a reasonable prospect of conviction due to the investigative delay. On July 17th of 2018, the victim contacts the Office of the Independent Police Review Director, and on October 17th of 2019, Constable Renee Taminga pleads guilty to neglect of duty. Now, Officer Renee Taminga did also shed some light on his situation at the time in terms of what might have contributed to some of these delays. He says at that moment he had a heavy caseload at the OPP within the traffic management unit, and he says he was also investigating a number of fatalities. On the personal side, he says through this hearing process that he was going through some very personal issues, and one of those included, he says, one of his colleagues committed suicide as well. And one lawyer, a legal expert we spoke with today, says this situation speaks to more of a systemic problem when it comes to the culture of policing.
It speaks to the issue of not asking for help, and in policing, to ask for help is still perceived today, although there are a lot of resources, it's still perceived as a sign of weakness. Policing is become an administrative machine that is so focused on generating numbers, keeping costs down, and results up, do more with less. I don't believe the officer in this case is alone to blame.
And he further went on to say that he believes the organization, in this case the OPP, should shoulder some blame in all of this as well. And so what happened, Renee Taminga did plead guilty here. He was given a penalty of 120 hours of pay docked. And Eli Labaki says that's on the high end when he compares other cases that have similarities. Chris.
Jason, just going back to the OPP there, how does this affect the relationship that that organization has with the public?
Well, the victim did have a chance to speak through this hearing process, through the hearing officer. So let's take a look at a little bit of what she said, which will kind of paint a picture from her perspective how this has changed her perception. The hearing officer said on her behalf she was misled and ignored. She now feels uneasy when she sees a police officer and admits she has lost trust in the police. Now, that same hearing officer went on to say himself during that decision, in this matter, the reputation of the OPP has clearly been damaged, and it is not too much to ask the police to do their job by investigating the matter and holding people accountable by bringing them to justice. And one criminal lawyer that we spoke with and former cop agrees.
So it just creates a downward spiral I would say, in the society. So it is crucial for the officer to maintain a reputation of professionalism and competency, because that's holds the fabric of our society. So the next time when somebody needs help from the police, they may they may hesitate, right? They may say, well, is the officer competent? Can I actually get the help?
And both experts that you heard from there today say that this instance is highly unusual to see so many delays and errors in a single investigation, especially since the officer in this case was so experienced. Now, we did also reach out to the Essex County OPP Detachment Commander Glenn Miller. He declined an interview, but did send us an emailed statement and says, in part, given the size of the Ontario Provincial Police, serious breaches of the law and behavioral standards are rare. And the hearing officer did conclude his decision by saying that Officer Rene Taminga did have an exemplary career prior to this, and that he should be commended for that career that did span more than 30 years. Chris.
Thanks, Jason. The CBC's Jason Vio live tonight in Essex. Stats Canada says 2 million jobs were lost last month because of the pandemic, the highest jobless rate in the country, right here in Windsor, with a 12.9% unemployment rate. So what's it like to be part of that grim statistic? And will those jobs be coming back anytime soon? Lisa Shing is looking into that tonight from Toronto.
It was a little shocking because I have a young daughter and bills to pay.
Until mid-March, Scott Cooney was the executive chef at Morgan's on the Danforth. Then the pandemic hit and the gastropub in the city's East End shut down and he was laid off.
A lot of stress, had to push a lot of bills and ask for a little bit of family help to pay some rent and stuff, but just trying to cope with things.
Cooney is one of more than 1 million Ontarians that have lost their jobs since February. Most of them have been in retail, accommodation and food services, and in the manufacturing industry. That's about 1 out of every 7 working Ontarians. About a quarter of the job losses were in Toronto.
It is unprecedented, especially the speed at which it has happened.
This economist says the unemployment rate hasn't been this high since the 1980s, and that happened over a period of 1.5 years.
Is this something that's going to have a lasting impact for a while to come, do you think?
So we've put the economy, the whole global economy, including the Canadian economy, into an induced coma to some extent. So when are we going to wake up from that? And if we do wake up, we're not just going to switch on again fully at 100%.
Nobody today can answer unless they have a crystal ball, and if they do, I'd like to borrow it.
Scott Cooney says he'll try and find work again, but isn't sure his industry will ever be what it once was.
Once we go back, it's going to be reduced capacity, which makes a lot of restaurants hard, just the way they're laid out and everything. Like, are they going to allow servers to serve them?
What we do know, a full recovery, if there is one, isn't likely until there's a vaccine, which could be another 12 to 18 months. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
And Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkins joining us now. Mayor, we're starting to see more and more companies slowly reopening. FCA and Ford, they're calling workers back in 2 weeks. Those are two of our larger employers. How comfortable are you with those plans to start reopening the economy?
Well, listen, I think the Premier and the province has certainly made the right steps. They're unwinding the way we got to where we are. Those list of essential workplaces is being unwound in a very slow and methodical and staged and staggered way, which is appropriate. I did have a call yesterday with the folks at Ford of Canada and head of manufacturing in the U.S. To talk about their playbook, they call it. And it's a very comprehensive document about how they'll be calling folks back to work here in the city of Windsor and across the United States. That really, at the heart of it is making sure that all of the employees and their associates can be safe and feel safe coming back to work, because we know that there are a lot of folks out there who still feel like they just want to stay inside and hunker down until the COVID-19 numbers come to zero. But that's probably not completely practical. So it's good to see companies like Ford and others stepping up with really great plans that and the purchase of some lots of equipment and things that they're doing that really are going to help their employees feel safe returning to work. And that's really at the heart of all these decisions.
As we start to see industry open up, what about the city? Have you started to have conversations about bringing back some of the 500 plus people who are currently laid off?
So when it comes to some of the staff who are laid off, you can think of a lot of folks who are lifeguards who work in our community centers, some of the summer students that actually even haven't been hired. They were never laid off. We just haven't hired those rounds yet this year. We aren't actually looking right now in terms of restarting the community center or arena program. And so we realize we'll probably be at the tail end of a provincial order to allow that to happen. And we will respond accordingly with what we see happening at the provincial level. And there will be, and the Premier has been very good about sort of giving a heads up to organizations to be able to ramp up. And so we're looking internally. We met even yesterday talking internally at the city about how we would open up, what things we need to do, what considerations need to be factored into different departments. Certainly there are some, behind the scenes, back of house departments that the public never interacts with that will need to take extra precautions to make sure staff are protected. And of course, there's front of a house. So whether you're getting a marriage license or applying for a different type of license, there's an interaction with an employee here. And so, we're trying, and the message that we sent yesterday to staff is, to the extent that we can create the online tools that allow people to do this in a more seamless way without having to come down here, if we can make people's lives easier as a result of this, as people have adjusted and adapted to working online, let's try and do that.
Another thing that happened this morning that came out was the job reports, those job numbers. I'm sure you've seen them, 12.9% unemployment here in Windsor, the worst in the country. It's something that's affected everybody across Canada when we talk about COVID, but pre-pandemic, our numbers were already the highest in Canada. What does that return to normal or that recovery look like for a city like ours?
Yeah, so that's an impossible question for me to answer. Great question, but an impossible one for me to answer just yet. And I think that the numbers we saw today are really the tip of the iceberg. When it comes to a real report, will be next month when you've had the full thrust of the COVID-19 effect in that particular number.
And we'll post our full interview with the mayor on our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. About a third of the population in our region doesn't have what the CRTC calls essential internet access. That's according to Connecting Windsor Essex, a group that's fighting for better access. They took part in a virtual news conference today to look at how local tech firms are navigating the pandemic. Their director offered a ray of hope.
We've seen a tremendous amount of growth in quality broadband being made available throughout the various communities and again across the region. In the past, we've only had a particular incumbent with fiber optics available, and now we've got 4 different carriers vying for competitive business. And so we continue to work with them to try to help them build their business cases to extend throughout the entire region. So we're exploring any opportunity and trying to present opportunities.
This issue also came up in the House of Commons today. Dave Epp, the MP for Chatham, Kent Leamington, brought up issues mainly around Pelee Island. He says residents there need better access to the internet and that he'd like to see the government take action. Now, in a couple minutes, Colette Kennedy will have our weekend forecast, but we thought we'd leave you with a couple snaps of how Windsor is silently offering support through this pandemic and what the city looks like during all of this. We'll be back in a few. And joining us now for a live look at the weather is Colette Kennedy. And Colette, if I take a look out our window, the flurries just started before you came in. It's wonderful timing.
Yes, isn't it? I'm going to show you how they are reflected on our radar as well. But yes, we do have some wet flurries in our skies. And tonight, that frost advisory we've been seeing for the last few nights that extends from Niagara region back. Previously, it was towards Chatham-Kent. Tonight, yes, we're included all the way back towards Windsor and stretches up towards Sarnia as well. Last night for Windsor, we had some of that cloud cover, Leamington as well, where the temperature stayed kind of above freezing, but that's not the case tonight. That temperature will be falling off. We're at 3 degrees at the moment, 3 in Chatham-Kent as well, and those winds strong driving in here from the north. We'll see those backing off a little bit, so they'll ease up somewhat in the overnight hours, but then they'll come right back more towards from the west as we go into Saturday. So they'll be strong once again. But for now, even just the sustained winds, not the gusts, are driving these wind chills. So it already feels like -3, which is basically where we're going with the temperature for our overnight low. This is what I was talking about and what Chris is talking about, seeing out the window with some of these light flurries, very wet in nature, and you can see it gets over the lake and kind of mixes a little bit in there. We have that pocket that's moving through. We get into a bit of a break, and then into Saturday, more cloud cover, but there's still going to be a chance. It may not be reflected here, but there's a chance we'll have some flurries coming back into our skies. And then the next system that comes around is for Mother's Day, and it does look like we're going to see off and on showers through the day, at times getting heavier, some periods of rain in there, but also the risk of having some thunderstorm activity as we get towards the latter part of the day on Sunday. So no, that's in there for Mom as well. Overnight tonight, this is what I mean, -3. The record is -1.7 from 1966, so -3 will definitely break that. Tomorrow, not so bad, 9. We should be closer to 19, so we're missing 10 degrees. But Sunday, even though it may be wet at times, milder conditions, and into next week, not looking as bad as right now, I guess.
Well, I hope you're able to enjoy part of your weekend there. Thanks, Colette.
You as well.
No proms locally here for graduating students, but it doesn't mean it's canceled. We'll show you how one group is trying to bring up something to make up for what's lacking during this pandemic. There will be no proms for kids graduating from high school in this region because of COVID-19, at least not in the traditional sense. An organization stepping in to give students a virtual prom all across Canada. One of the student leaders, it's a Windsor High School student. And it's not just the music, they're doing it for good causes.
So for the live event, we've lined up Juno-winning artist Loud Luxury. They're set to perform a live DJ set. We're going to be giving away a lot of awesome prizes throughout the night in real time. So for example, we have some pizzas to give away. So we'll be like, students, check your email, and we're going to give away 1,000 free pizzas. So it's going to be an interactive event. Students are going to be able to meet each other across the country. And then I'm working on some really exciting shout outs from some Canadian role models. And we're going to announce them soon, but the leader of our country may be involved.
I'll probably send you some pics, and I'm like, hell nah, been waiting too long.
So basically what it's doing is it's in support of Kids Help Phone. So any and all donations are going to go towards their organization.
I want that cruel love. Hell nah.
It was a little weird at first because I was like, oh, a virtual prom, like it's just not going to be the same. But then I realized like what it was for, and it gives like Canadian students the opportunity to come together and just celebrate something that in a different, unique way. And like, how many times are you going to be able to say like you went to a virtual prom? So it's a unique experience.
The next generation ain't that bad. It's 6:29 p.m. and that's it for CBC Windsor News. Of course, Mother's Day on Sunday. I want to wish a happy mother to my mom, Pat. Big Mother's Day for you. But of course, I won't be able to be there. So we tribute tonight the letter carriers. Take a look at this mural at Winology, painted by George Rizzo. Have a good weekend and stay safe out there.